So there's not going to be a lot up there on the screens. I tend to talk more than and since we're not doing training, I figured it'd be a lot easier just having some topics up there and just kind of going over things. So for those who, well, first of all, who in here doesn't use the edge? Because I think that's an easier question than not. And okay, so we got a couple. So I will explain who I am. I am Lenny Prion. I am with the Edge. I am the director of operations and training for the company. I was with the company before it was existent. Dick Abbott actually started a store software before that, and I've been with him for 25 years. So I've been doing this a little bit of time. I also worked at a jewelry store for 10 years because I had no idea about the jewelry industry. So when I started working with the software, I was like, yeah, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So I started working at a store part-time, and I did that for 10 years. I still do a lot of in-store training. So I'm in stores all the time, looking at what's going on. And that's kind of what helps us move our software the way we want it to go, because we're talking to everybody all the time. I'm at almost every single trade show in the jewelry industry that we attend. I also do a lot of the state organizations. So I go and talk there and train there and do stuff like that. So we stay up to date with what is currently happening in the industry. And actually, like Stephen was saying, a lot of our people have jewelry experience. So my training department, I have 2 regional managers from other companies that came to us as trainers. We have 46 people in our company. There's 28 between training and support. So we always have people there to help you out, to make sure you're going the right way. And at the end of this, we're going to talk a little bit more about training, because I think that's honestly one of the most important things when it comes to anything we're dealing with. But the first thing I want to talk about, kind of because we're here and we're talking about Punchmark, we're talking about things like that, and they are separate from us, but a lot of what you guys do starts in the Edge when it comes to your website. And that's kind of what I want to bring in here. So point of sale, when you're collecting data from your customers, when you're selling items, mentioned it earlier, but what's bringing the customers in, that's where you're collecting all this data. Your inventory, obviously, that's huge for your website. If you're not putting the right information in, if you're not filling out details, if you're not categorizing things, if you're not telling me what not to send up, your website's going to look crazy. Or there's going to be things that are missing. It's not going to work as well as it would if you have that information in there correctly. So I want to start with point of sale. And it doesn't honestly matter what software you have. The same kind of thoughts and processes should be happening in any software that you have. So first thing is, whenever you're bringing up a new customer, whenever you're adding a new customer, I should say, you should be requiring data. Don't let your employees just get through with cash sale. If you have that button, block it if you can, or get rid of it. There's not a lot of reason to do that. Secondly, when they are adding a customer and they're putting information in, don't let them just put a name. You've lost everything that you have to be able to follow with that customer. And it doesn't matter. I get the argument all the time. Well, they just came in for a watch battery. Well, yeah, that's right. This time they just came in for a watch battery. But if you can reach out to them, if you can follow up with them, they may be more than a watch battery down the road. If you're just putting every single person that comes in as a cash sale or under a generic name to get rid of those watch batteries, you're losing a lot of information. If you're not having your employees every single time a customer comes in to check their contacts, you're losing data. So in the Edge, and I'm assuming with most other softwares, we tell you when you bring up a customer what you're missing. So it's going to literally spell out you're missing an address, you're missing a phone number, you're missing an email. The other thing it's going to do is we've actually changed it so it highlights a button on the screen red when that information is not available. So again, if you're missing any of those, their contact button is highlighted in red, letting you know you're missing stuff here. One of the big things that people always say to me is, well, what happens when I get a mailing returned or an email bounced or this or that? Well, yeah, you want to get rid of it because you don't want to include it in there. You have an option to say that this is no longer a mailing address. Doesn't mean you get rid of the address. Until you get a new address, don't ever get rid of the information that you have, because that's the only point of information you have on this customer. but mark it so that they don't get mailings, so it doesn't show up in places. But there's got to be someone that's getting those mailings back. And when they do, they should be going to market as no longer a preferred mailing address, but they should also be putting a pop-up on that customer. So in the Edge, you have the ability of putting notes and pop-ups. Well, pop-ups, when you put them in, will automatically show up when that customer comes in next. Does everyone pay attention when it says that we don't have a mailing address? Not really. It's just red words there, and they don't always pay attention to it. If you have a pop-up on the customer, the very next time they come in, as soon as they select that customer, it's interrupting their flow and saying, you need an address on this customer. Again, with a bounced email or an email that's coming back as bad, get it off the emailing list and put a note in there, or pop-up in there that says, hey, get this information for me. So now, instead of just being a note where you have to go look at it or little red letters on the screen, it's actually stopping them from going further and saying, hey, we need this information. So keeping those contacts correct is huge. Another big thing with data, and hopefully not a lot of you use this, but the Edge does have a way of putting miscellaneous lines on things. Miscellaneous lines are meant for just that. Things that don't happen often, notes to put on a receipt, don't sell stuff through miscellaneous lines. There's no reason for it. The problem with selling stuff in miscellaneous lines is someone's got to go back later and fix it. Because if you have it in the store, it should be in the inventory. And again, if someone happens to try to get around to use a miscellaneous line and someone forgets to go back and fix that, and the Edge still thinks that that original item is in stock, where is it? It's on your website. It's anywhere else you have that information. So now when someone goes there, they see that it's available and they're like, oh, I love that. Now they order it. And they're expecting it to get to them quickly. Now you get it, you're looking around, you can't find it, and then you figure out this happened. So keeping your data correct is going to be a huge part of making sure that everything that is connected to the Edge, everything that you push out from the Edge is there. Obviously, we've been talking about communicating with our customers. If you don't have their cell phone, if you don't have their cell phone marked as a cell phone, a lot of that gets lost. You're not going to be able to push things out and say, this is how I want to contact that person. If you are using text message or emailing in the Edge, if you have those two things set up, make it so that all services, and when I say that, repair, appraisal, special order, custom, require a notification. Even if it's not text or email, and they say, I want to be called, make sure you're putting the right phone number in there. Every single time you do that, or you force your employees to do that, it forces them to look at the contacts and say, how do you want me to contact you? When that customer gives them a phone number that's not on the list, they add it. So now we have the correct information. When they say, hey, send me a text about that, and they're looking and they're in the text section and they're reading off the mobile number that you guys have, and they're like, oh, that's not my mobile number. Now we can clean that up. Same thing with emails. If they say, hey, I want my notification to be emailed or my receipt to be emailed. If you don't have it, you have to ask for it. Now you have a good address. And every single time you force them to put that in, it's always making them look at the contacts. So we should be making sure that all of our associates, anytime they have to get into contacts to do anything, they're checking them. Is this still the right information? And if not, we're fixing it. So point of sale is the starting point for everything that you do when it comes to marketing, because that's where you get that info. And if you're not having them check that, if you're not having them follow up with that, making sure things are correct, you're losing that. And they're talking to them every single time. So there's no reason not to. You know, a lot of people tell me, well, it takes too long. I don't want someone to run in and out of my store. I want to spend time with them. I want to build that relationship with them, because that's what makes everything down the road easier. Every store that client tells, if you're just rushing those people in and out, you're not building that rapport. So when you do call, it does feel like a cold call. But if you're talking to them every time they're in their store, helping them out, making sure you have the information that you need, it makes those calls, those follow-ups easier, because they know you. You have that personal relationship with them. Does that make sense? Inventory data. Obviously, this shouldn't be a surprise, but if you don't have the right information in the Edge or in your software in general, it's not going to push up correctly. So what am I talking about there? Every software has the ability of putting details on items. So yes, you have a description. That's wonderful. That's what's going to go up. That's what they're going to see. You can always make it fluffier, nicer, prettier. Punchmark can actually clean it up a little bit when it gets up there. But one of the big things is, how do they get to those things? What I mean by is, they're going to your website and they're saying, I'm looking for rings. Then they're saying, well, I want 14 karat. Then they're saying, I want this stone in it. The only way to do that without a lot of extra work is to make sure you're putting that data into your software. Anyone in here who is using the Edge, if you have those data fields and you don't have drop-down set and you're letting everyone type anything they want to, stop it. Not a good thing. Metal types. That's one that drives me crazy when I go to stores. There's not many metal types. There really isn't. They don't change very often. So keeping an updated list of the metal types that you carry is not hard. But if you don't, and you're allowing them to type because you don't have all your lists set up correctly, they can type whatever they want. So I have one person that puts it in and they put just the number 14. I have someone else who puts it in that says 14K. I have another person that puts it in that says 14 karat. But then I have yet another person that says 14KY, because they want to say yellow, but yellow is a separate field altogether. But now just those 4 things, whenever I'm running a report and I want to say, show me all the chain that I have, but I want it grouped by style, so I know what style of chain it is, so rope, box, whatever it may be. But then underneath that, I want it broken down by metal, then I want it broken down by length. That's a great report, easy, be able to see what I need and go out. But for the stores that I was just talking about, where they allow them to put whatever they want in, they have 4 different sections for 14 karat. And then it's color underneath that. So not only do I have 4 of those, but now you're just exponentially building that report up. And now you've got to take 18 different numbers just to find out what this one thing is, how many of them you have. So it's really, really important that if you can, that you structure your data and make it so that when everyone puts it in, they're putting it in the same way. Just for you Edge guys, there is a new feature that is coming out in the next release, which lets you go to a category and say this category requires stones. So your engagement rings, things like that, no one could accidentally skip over the stone tab because it will force them to put it in. So again, we're constantly adding things to make it so that things are done the way you want to. Every one of those details you put in, you have the option of saying they're required. Not only do you have that, you have the option of saying they have to match the list that's already there. So again, if you're building your lists and you're keeping them updated, there's no reason that anyone's putting different stuff in there. And when you do go to run your reports, you're going to get that information. Now, the usual next question that I get is, what do I do with all the stuff that's in there? There is no fast, easy way of going in and updating all of that. You can slowly go in and start finding those things. Because even if you fix your lists, when you go to do a find in the Edge and you're using your details, you're going to see everything that's in those fields. So if you decide that you're just going to do 14 space carat as your 14 karat, you can find everything that doesn't match, but you do have to go in and update them, change it to the correct ones. You can, however, for that style, because you may have had it 15 times in the past and you want to fix that history, anytime you're on an Edge item, if you've updated any of the details, the stone information, anything like that, under supervisor, there is a button that says update style. That'll take that same exact style that you had from that vendor forever and push that data backwards. So you have the option of cleaning it up once and pushing it back to every other item number that you had that matches that style. Okay, so data is really, really important. And inventory data, not only for your website and everything else, but just for your reporting is huge. So the more you can move to those lists and say they have to match and make sure they're choosing the details, the better off you're going to be in the long run. I know someone, I don't remember who it was, I think it was Jason was talking about it. Being able to mark things as do not upload. Okay, yes, every single item has that, but you can also do a find in inventory. So I don't remember who it was talking about those items, but if they're mostly from the same vendor, but it's only 30 of the items out of their 600 that you don't want to go up, if you do a find and you get a list of those, you can always work with inventory lists. You can right click, say show checkboxes, check the ones you don't want to go up, and right under the supervisor button on the list, there's an option of update web info. And there's a checkbox for never upload. You hit that, and now those 30 items all at once get marked as never upload. You can update the data on the website tab. So if you haven't been putting in great web titles, if you haven't been putting in meta tags or anything like that, right from that list, you can show photos. So every inventory list, you can right click and show photos. So now you can see what they're like. And now you can go in and check the ones you want, and you can add meta tags, you can add product descriptions, and you can push that to everything that you have checked. And they can append, so it doesn't have to overwrite what's in there. So you could add this one new tag to everything that you have in that list. So again, we try to make things as easy as possible. There's certain things where, yep, you're still gonna have to go into every single item and click make the changes, but we try to make it so you can mass change those things. Another recent change there, talking about data, I don't know if anyone has vendors that have basically set pricing. And when they send you a new list, you're now going into every item and updating them because it's not a percentage. Everybody knows that under inventory utilities, there is now a pricing wizard. It will actually either spit you out an Excel file that is by style with the pricing that you could just update and then re-import, or you could do it right on the screen. So you can say, I want this one vendor. It'll show you every single style, and it'll show you the current cost, retail, and current price. And you just update them one at a time, but it's once per style, and then it pushes back to everything that you have on hand. So again, we're trying to help you so that you can keep this information up to date with as little amount of work as you can. Back to point of sale for 1 second, Y-ins. So I think it was Stuart was talking about why they come in for Google, and they were choosing Google. You guys control that. You decide what options they're giving you. If anyone in here is using the Y-ins at point of sale or at any point of sale, don't give your employees the ability to type what they want. Because if you allow them to say what brought the customer in today, you're going to get things that make absolutely no sense to this world. They're coming in because their wife's mad at them. They're coming in because the dog died. They're coming in. And I've seen these things in customers' reports when I run their Y-ins. And I look at them, how does that help you with marketing at all? Because that's what Y-in is meant for. It's to track what is bringing these people in and where your money is actually working and not. So make sure when you're setting up your Y-ins and your promotions that the information that you're putting there makes sense for what you want to see in the end. And make it so they can't choose their own. They have to choose something that you've added in there to the list. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, that second point there, the better the data is in the starting point, which in most cases here is the edge, the less work you have to do on the other side. So if you're not filling in stow data, if you're not filling in the detail fields that explain metal, color, finish, things like that, you're now having to build all of those indexes on the website to say, this is what this is, this is what this is, this has a diamond in it, this is the weight of it. You're double working. Whereas if you started in the beginning in one spot and put everything in the way that it should be, there's less work on the other side. Okay. So data, very, 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 very important. So now, what I usually get when I talk about cleaning data, fixing data, putting right data in is, I don't have time to do it. Well, first of all, we should be making that time because that is an important thing. But some of the things that we can do in the edge that will help you with the time that you have, free up time. If you haven't, has anyone in here started with the automations in the edge? Ooh, we're going to talk. Okay. So the edge has ways to automate lots of things. So if there's certain reports that you run daily, weekly, monthly, that are for yourself, If there's certain reports that you run daily, weekly, monthly for outside sources, your accountants, vendors that want to know what memo sold, what things like that, that can all be automated in the edge. If you memorize a report, so you set up a report the way you want it, and you memorize it, it can be scheduled to run on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis. And you decide what time, and then you never have to be there to get that to happen. So if you always want this report to run on the first of the month for last month, whether your store's open or closed, as long as the server of the edge is on, that report will go. Now that report can be saved as an actual PDF report. It can be saved in the edge as an Excel or a CSV file, or it can be emailed. So again, going back to the vendor stuff, if I have a vendor who I need to send a list of all memo items that are sold, and I have to do that once a month, I memorize that report for that one vendor, I set up the details the way that I want it, and I find out what email address they want me to send it to. And then I never have to think about it ever again. The email doesn't need to be in the edge, it doesn't need to be an associate. When you set it up, it just says what email address is it going to. My only tip there is if you are setting them up and they're going directly to the vendor, put yourself on it too, or someone in the store on it too. Because if someone happens to turn the server off and that report doesn't run, you'll actually see that you didn't get it in your inbox. Okay, and then you can just hit the button and run the report. But automations are going to be helpful for even things beyond that. So how many people in here would love to follow up on every single repair that's picked up? Probably everybody. How many people actually do it? A lot less. You can schedule automations for post pickups in the edge. And what that means is you get to pick a time frame. So for me, I was always huge on following up with sizings. So a week after a sizing was picked up, we'd always have someone call, because this is now old days because I haven't worked in a store for a while. We didn't text back then. We always had someone to call with and follow up and make sure the ring was still fitting, that everything was right. And if it wasn't, we'd bring them back in. That does take a lot of time. But nowadays with text and email, depending on how the customer wants to be notified, you can schedule an automation that says 1 week after pickup, send out this text message that says, we just want to make sure that that is still fitting you. If it's not, please let us know. We will make it work so that it goes, so it's great for you. But it's automatic. It's not something I have to remember to do. It's not something I have to assign people. So now that probably 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how many repairs I'm doing, that I would have someone calling to follow up on, it's now done every day without even me thinking about it. If I want to, because no one has repairs sitting in their drawer right now that are over 2 weeks old that have been done where the customers never picked them up. I mean, that just doesn't happen. I get it. But if it did happen, you can schedule it every 2 weeks for the edge to send a reminder without having to hit a button. Hey, just reminding you, your job is done and it's still here waiting for pickup. And those messages can be different. You can set every one of these notifications with a different message. Don't put their cell phone number on the engagement ring, on the repair. Because if there's no notification, it won't go out. Right, so you would just do phone number at that point because you don't want the edge to automate. So when you take that one in, you say call, and then the follow-up stuff will not happen. Because it is all based on what they choose. I don't just randomly text someone if they had originally said that they wanted to be called when it was done. It won't do that. It'll only use the notifications that are on those services. Yep, however you're doing text messages, so the same way that your notifications are working, these reminders will too. So it queues up and just sends it up. So all of that stuff that we always want to do, or that we are doing, because some people are doing this, if you automate it, you've saved so much time in that week from all these people having to do that, that now you have time to clean up the stuff that I want you to clean up anyways. Does that make sense? And then some other things in the edge that are going to help. Appointments and tasks. Instead of running around or not knowing who's doing what today, we have an appointment system in the edge. You put the appointment on the calendar shows up. Tasks. If you're not using tasks, tasks can be used for everything. So again, not that it happens all the time, but I walk into a store, I'm doing some training and I'm sitting at the inventory person's desk. And I'm not kidding when I sit down, there is a frame of Post-it notes around their monitor. Some of them are already done. Some of them, they have no idea what it's about. Some of them are due tomorrow. But that's how they're letting their inventory person know everything that needs to happen for special orders. They bring up an item and the price is wrong. They bring up the item, the stones are wrong. But what they do is they put it on a Post-it note and stick it on the monitor. Tasks are your electronic Post-it notes that can't be lost. They can't have a date. And I can go look at any time and see if they're done or not. So instead of me having to go to that desk every time as the manager or the owner to see if everything's done that needs to be done, I can hit one button and find them. Every single screen in the Edge has the ability to create a task. So if I'm on a special order and I'm taking it in and I'm not sure if this vendor even does this, if it comes in this color, if it comes in this size or whatever it is, instead of just relying on my inventory person to have to go through all those special orders every single time to see what they are, there is a button at the bottom of every intake that says add task. I could choose the inventory person. I could put my little note in that says, hey, check and see if this comes in 14 karat white and in a size 9. And then when I hit save, it will add to their calendar. It will send them an email or a text if I decide to. But now every single day, they're going to get a reminder email in the morning from the Edge that says, these are the things you have to do. And that task will never go away until they close it. So if I want to know, me being the salesperson, if I want to know, did she call the vendor? Did this happen? All I have to do is look at the tasks and see if she closed it. And if she did, good to go. I was just at a store doing training in California, and their inventory person always went back to special orders and put notes on it to say it was shipped. And once she filled out all the details about the shipment, she would then go to her email and send an email to the associate that started it saying, hey, here are the details, call your customer, because they call the customer on everything. Well, we just cut out hours of her day because as she's updating the special order and putting that note in, she just hits add task at the bottom for the sales associate and says, hey, updated. She doesn't have to rewrite anything because anytime your task is attached to something, when Lenny goes, the associate goes and looks that up and it says, hey, we've shipped it, it's been shipped. They just hit the button that says, show me the special order and all the details come up. The customer's there, the information. So now they can make the phone call right from that screen, let the customer know, and then put a note on the special order that's up on the screen that says, hey, I let Lenny know that his job is being shipped and it should be on time. So using the tasks and the appointments are going to save a lot of time. And then the last thing on the more time one is opportunities. So that's a new thing that was built in probably about a year ago. But you guys deal with this all the time. Someone comes in and they're starting a process with you. They want to buy an engagement ring. It's his first step in the store today. Is he buying an engagement ring today? Probably not. We're probably doing some work. We're finding things. We're talking about things, but there's probably going to be a process to this. Well, right now, you guys are probably putting things on a wish list. Then you're putting notes on his record saying, hey, this is what we need to do for him. But that's 2 different spots. But now we also add a special order to bring a mounting in to take a look at this. Now we're 3 different spots. And when he comes in and says, hey, I'm just checking to see how things are going. He was working with Lenny. Lenny's not in today. What do? Well, we scramble around to try and find, or we pick up the phone and call Lenny and say, hey, I know you're off today, but what's going on? Opportunities in the Edge are meant for that. So that first time that guy walks in and says, hey, I'm looking for an engagement ring, we talk to him, we figure some things out, but he says, you know what, I'll come back next week to see the diamonds you're memoing in for me. Right from point of sale, if you start an opportunity, the opportunity lets you set a budget, lets you say what they're looking for, lets you set a time frame that they're looking to get this done. But not only that, after it's in, it lets you put notes. It lets you log all the messages that you're sending to them, whether it's phone, email, text, anything like that. It lets you add inventory items to that and then remove them when you decide that's not going to fit for what they want. But now, anytime that customer comes in and says, hey, just want to see where we are, all I do is bring them up a point of sale and the opportunities button will be highlighted. And now everything about that, all the notes, all the tasks, all the messages, every inventory that's come in for it and then been removed off of it is all in one spot. So I don't have to go searching. I don't have to run around. So again, I put this on more time because imagine how much extra time you'd have if anytime someone comes in and said, hey, I've been working with Lenny on this sale and I think I want to do this. Instead of going to all those different places or having to track it down or find his little book that he has that he puts all of his stuff in, it's all in one spot. So the time savings in that is going to be huge. Does that make sense? Okay. Knowledge is power. Very true. So we talked, I kind of ramble a little bit and talk about these things because there's so many things that I always come to places like this and I say, if you only did this, all the time that can be saved, all the running around that stops. But the best way to do it, besides taking little pieces from me every time I go somewhere, which I will still do, and you could still do, but training. Training is huge. We give you every possible way you could think of to train. You have training in Sheldon every single month. So that is intro. But I would tell you, you get a free class every 3 years. Don't leave it on the table. We change so much in 3 years that even the intro class, I guarantee you're going to learn stuff. So I have people that are clockwork. They come to my Shelton training class once every 3 years. And again, yes, they know a lot of the stuff, but then they get to a point, they're like, oh, when was that put in? How does that work? And now they learn it from there. If you don't want to come up to Shelton, that's perfectly fine. We have training online. So that same exact class happens twice a month online. And again, you get a new seat every 3 years. If you're using any of our credit card processing, you have as many seats as you want. You get a new person, instead of you training them, send them to us. Let us teach them how to do it. We always do seminars, just like these guys are doing. We have a seminar in Vegas. We have a seminar in Shelton in September. Those are not necessarily how to hit the buttons, but they are, this is how to use the information from the edge. So always take a look out for that. But also, again, I'll give you that you don't have time now if you're not using all those other things. But if you want to do it on your own time, that's what Edge User is. So if you're not part of Edge User, do it. It's just our user site, edgeuser.com. You will have to register, but there's a whole knowledge base. So, I mean, you could type anything you possibly can want to know, and it's going to come up with not only articles and descriptions, but it's going to come up with any videos related to it. And there's a whole separate section just on videos. There's the training videos, which are all of our recorded webinars that are usually anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes that we did through COVID on those different sections. But then there's also another video library, which is all of our short little tutorial ones. So if you have a new person coming in, the only thing they need to know right now is how to take in a repair. There's a repair intake video that just talks about repair intake and what you need to do to get it done. It's a 5.5 minute video. There's roughly about 300 and some odd videos on Edge User. And everyone in the store can have their own account, and they should. So if you have 10 people, all 10 people should register. They put their own things in. They can look at it anytime they want to. Okay, I did really good. I ended 3 minutes early. So questions and answers. Anyone have any questions or answers? You give me answers, I'll give you the question.
I know go back to the part of the including inventory, you don't let it before you pay and all that good stuff. So I try to be very strict about the list, except for the style.
Absolutely agree. And that is the only one that I would also say. So style on an item, just so everybody knows what we're talking about, you have an engagement ring. That is your type of jewelry. But under style, you're gonna have solitaire, halo, hidden halo, all those different kinds of things. So you do create a list with all your defaults, but that is the one where styles do change often, but you also do a lot of special orders. So if you're special ordering in this engagement ring where someone wanted a paw print around the head of the diamond, you may never bring that in again, but in this one time, it's a paw print engagement ring. So you do want them to be able to add that in that one time. So style is the only one where I would say leave it open for choice.
So what do we call those fancy links? So they have a special name to it.
So what I would say is, how do you want to report those? So any of those crazy links, you're probably treating them as a group. So I would say fancy link, but then in the description, I would put that word in there. You could also create a new detail field that says fancy link type. So at least it's in there. And then if you're bringing that into the description, it automatically happens. You can't report on that other field because it's not going into one of my data fields. But again, when I'm looking at reports, I'd probably consider those fancy, because unless I'm going to order it over and over and over again, I can track those together. Does that make sense?
Add a new customer now, it's requiring you to
Enter an ID and password. It can't. So the reason we did that is because we're now tracking how well they collect contact data. So there's actually a report that tells you by each associate, the customers that were added, whether there's an address, phone number, email. You could have it in a summary mode, so that so many people ask, how do I know who's doing the right thing at point of sale? Well, the only way is I need to know who's putting it in. So yes, it's a couple of seconds longer, and it will ask you every time. It doesn't keep you logged in, just like point of sale doesn't. But what are you getting, 10, 15? But then none of the reports will work. So that's the problem. So it is just something new. We hate things new, I get that. But in the big scheme of things, how many new customers are you adding a day? New.
10 to 15.
Okay. So you've added 10 to 15 minutes to their whole day. It doesn't take that long to put the ID and password in. See, but now the data that you get on the other end of who's doing what, who put them in. Sorry, that's actually me telling me that I ran out of time. I was like, where is that coming from? I forgot I set the timer so that, because if I didn't get that, I would just keep going. But that is why. It's because we want you to know who put them in and be able to track that information. It depends on the detail field, but I think you grab all of our detail fields, don't you? No matter whether they're.
I probably know not category and you can put like map type to who I can detail 3, but only on messages and tenants.
Right.
That third way is like 5 and then that engagement. So like we're working on that mapping to keep full control of it, and as well as the default.
But it has to be a drop down one, or if we are here mentioning stuff over work too.
Well, technically both. The rule of thumb is always use drop downs when you can, because you know, for example, some people have typed in 14K, 14KT, 14 space K, 14 space here, and all those possible options. We know that because 14K, 18K are the most popular options. We've mapped all those things you can think of to the right place. But if you use a drop down, at least kind of pigeonholes your choice, and it has more success on the front.
All right, so it is lunchtime, so I don't want. Yes. They should still be there. We'll have to look at that. We'll talk about that after. But I'll have to take a look and see how it's stored. But we should be able to. Sorry, stepped wrong. But we should still be able to clean it up. So I'll have to see how it came in and where it is. As long as it's in a data field, that it's in the right data field for me, we should be able to fix it. It's still not going to be automatic. It's not going to be like take all of this and make it this. But we can still get a list of it and chug through real quickly and be able to update those to what they should be. But we'll look at that a little closer. All right, I am here for the rest of this, even though I'm not talking anymore. So if you do have questions, please feel free to come talk to me wherever you see me, whether it's cocktail, dinner, whatever. I am more than more than happy to answer questions. But if you do have questions that are more towards how do I do this, how do I do that? If you email training@AJS LLC, that goes to our queue. If I'm there, I can't answer them, but you do have another 5 people that are always looking at that. And if you happen to email us and it's really a support issue, don't worry, we'll get it over to the right place. But at that, I only ran a couple minutes over. And thank you for your time. And I look forward to talking to you over the next day and a half.